What if everything you thought you knew about attraction was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? We spend so much time chasing chemistry, decoding signals, and trying to master the art of connection. But what if the real secret to lasting attraction lies in a 2,000-year-old philosophy? Stoicism, often seen as a guide for resilience and self-mastery, holds surprising wisdom for modern love and relationships. Imagine approaching dating not with anxiety or games, but with the clarity, confidence, and unshakable calm of a Stoic. This isn't about suppressing emotions or becoming coldly rational. It's about understanding the deeper mechanics of human connection, the kind that transcends fleeting sparks and builds something enduring. Think about the last time you felt truly drawn to someone. Was it just their appearance, their charm, or something quieter, a sense of strength, presence, or authenticity? Stoics believed that the most powerful form of attraction begins within, rooted in self-awareness and purpose. When you stop orbiting others' opinions and start embodying your own values, you radiate a magnetism that no amount of clever conversation or calculated gestures can replicate. This video isn't another list of shallow dating hacks. It's a journey into 25 principles borrowed from Stoic Logic, each one a tool to transform how you show up in relationships, not to manipulate outcomes, but to become the kind of person who naturally invites depth, respect, and genuine connection. From the way you handle rejection to the standards you refuse to compromise, Stoicism offers a roadmap for navigating the chaos of modern dating with wisdom. Picture this: instead of agonizing over mixed signals, you learn to focus only on what you can control: your actions, your integrity, your growth. Instead of fearing vulnerability, you embrace it as a strength, knowing that true connection demands courage. These ideas aren't theoretical. They're practical, battle-tested truths that have shaped minds from ancient Rome to today's psychologists and relationship experts. Whether you're single, in a relationship, or simply curious about the philosophy behind human attraction, these 25 rules will reframe how you see every interaction. Ready to discover what Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus might teach you about love? Let's begin. The first and most important rule of attraction in Stoic philosophy might surprise you. It has nothing to do with how you dress, what you say, or even who you pursue. It starts with you. Stoics called it self-attraction, the quiet, unshakable pull of someone who knows their own worth. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. At first glance, that might sound grim, but buried in those words is a radical truth. When you live with the awareness that time is limited, you stop wasting energy chasing approval and start embodying the qualities that truly matter. Think of it like this: have you ever met someone so comfortable in their own skin that you couldn't help but lean in when they spoke? That's not charisma. That's the result of internal alignment. The Stoics believed attraction is a natural byproduct of self-mastery. The moment you stop begging the world to validate you through likes, matches, or superficial attention, you begin to radiate something far more compelling. Confidence rooted in integrity doesn't need to announce itself. It's in the way you hold eye contact, not to impress, but because you're present. It's in the way you walk away from what doesn't serve you without bitterness. This is where the dichotomy of control comes in. Epictetus taught that our power lies only in our choices, not in outcomes. Applied to attraction, you can't control who finds you attractive, but you can control whether you're someone you respect. That shift changes everything. Imagine two people at a social event, one anxiously scanning the room for signs of approval, the other engaged in conversation simply because they find it interesting. Who draws you in? The Stoic answer is obvious. When your sense of worth comes from living by your principles: kindness, courage, honesty, you become a mirror. Others see in you what they aspire to embody themselves. History's most magnetic figures, from Socrates to modern leaders, shared this trait. They were complete unto themselves. That doesn't mean they were perfect. It means they embraced their flaws as part of the work, not something to hide. A relationship built on this foundation isn't about filling voids, it's about sharing strength. So before you dissect dating profiles or analyze texts, ask yourself the Stoic question: am I someone I'd be drawn to? Because the strongest attractor isn't out there. It's already within you, waiting to be uncovered. There's a paradox at the heart of attraction. The more desperately you cling to it, the faster it slips through your fingers. Modern dating culture feeds us this myth that love should be permanent, that every connection must lead somewhere, that rejection is a verdict on our worth. But Stoics saw through this illusion 20 centuries ago. Their practice of Memento Mori, remembering that everything, including ourselves, is temporary, wasn't meant to be morbid. It was a liberating truth. When you internalize that nothing lasts, not even your toughest heartbreak, you stop wearing neediness like a scent. Think about the last time you tried too hard to impress someone. The forced jokes, the overanalyzed texts, the way your stomach dropped when they didn't reply. Now picture the opposite, someone who engages with lightness, not because they don't care, but because they're secure in the knowledge that no single interaction defines them. That's the power of embracing impermanence. The Stoics didn't just accept transience, they used it as fuel. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing." Apply that to dating and suddenly you're not auditioning for forever on every first date. You're simply present, curious, free from the weight of expectation. Here's the irony: people are drawn to this unpressured energy like moths to flame. It's why the spark often fizzles when someone shifts from charming to clingy. Neediness repels not because it's weak, but because it violates a Stoic truth: you can't control others, only your own integrity. Imagine two painters. One obsesses over whether their work will hang in a museum. The other pours themselves into each brushstroke, knowing the canvas might fade. Which one creates something worth seeing? Dating with Memento Mori isn't about detachment. It's about showing up fully without mortgaging your peace to an outcome. Contrast this with today's obsession with "where is this going?" chats by the third date. We've turned connections into transactions, demanding guarantees before we risk vulnerability. But the Stoics would argue that's backwards. Real attraction flourishes in the space between "I choose you today" and "I'll miss you if you leave." It's the difference between clutching a fistful of sand and holding your palm open, letting the grains stay or go as they will. This mindset doesn't make you indifferent, it makes you fearless. You laugh louder, listen closer, and walk away cleaner when things don't align. History's greatest lovers, from poets to philosophers, understood this. They wrote sonnets knowing love might end, loved fiercely without demanding forever. That's the secret sauce. When you stop treating every date like an interview for soulmate status, you become someone who enjoys the dance rather than auditing the music. So next time you feel that familiar grip of anxiety, "Do they like me? Will this work?" borrow a Stoic question instead. If this were my last conversation with them, how would I want to show up? The answer might just redefine how you attract everything that follows. Rejection stings because we make it mean something it doesn't. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, put it bluntly: it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. Picture this: you send a thoughtful message to someone you admire, and they leave it on read. The modern mind spirals: was I too eager, not interesting enough? The Stoic mind asks a different question: what if their silence has nothing to do with me? That shift isn't denial, it's liberation. Stoics saw rejection as a litmus test for where we've tied our self-worth to external validation. When you hinge your value on someone else's attention, you hand them the keys to your emotional state. This is where Amor, Fati, the love of fate, transforms pain into power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle becomes the way." Applied to rejection, every no is a redirection, not a verdict. Imagine two artists submitting work to a gallery. One takes rejection as proof they'll never succeed. The other thinks this curator's taste isn't a measure of my art's worth, it's data who grows faster. Romantic rejection works the same way. The person who ghosts you isn't rejecting your essence, they're revealing their own capacity, or lack thereof, to recognize what you offer. Let's get practical. Next time you face rejection, try this 3-step Stoic reset. First, separate fact from story. The fact, they didn't reply. The story, I'm unlovable. Challenge the narrative. Second, ask the control question. Can I force them to want me? If the answer's no, and it always is, redirect energy to what you can influence, your mindset, your next move. Third, practice gratitude for the filter. Rejection isn't blocking you from something good, it's clearing space for what aligns. History's most resilient figures, from inventors to explorers, shared this trait. They worshipped progress over approval. Thomas Edison framed 10,000 failed experiments as finding ways that don't work. Apply that to dating. Every mismatch teaches you more about what fits. The Stoic secret isn't pretending rejection doesn't hurt. It's knowing the hurt is temporary, but the growth is permanent. So the next time someone walks away, thank them. They've just given you an upgrade, more clarity, more resilience, more room for the right thing to walk in. We've all met someone who brightens a room not because they're performing for attention, but because they carry an unshakable sense of who they are. That's the power of leading with virtue over validation. The Stoics named 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, not as lofty ideals, but as practical tools for living. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "A good character is the only guarantee of everlasting happiness." At first glance, that might sound unrelated to attraction, but consider this. When you act from integrity rather than insecurity, you bypass the exhausting dance of impression management and tap into something far more magnetic. Imagine 2 people at a dinner party. One laughs too loud at the host's jokes, nods eagerly at every opinion, their energy leaking desperation like a faucet. The other listens deeply, speaks with measured honesty, and isn't afraid to respectfully disagree. Who leaves a lasting impression? Flattery might win temporary favor, but virtue builds trust, the bedrock of real connection. Ancient Stoics observed that we're wired to admire those who stand firm in their principles. It's why history remembers figures like Cato, who chose death over compromising his values, while the sycophants of his era faded into footnotes. This isn't about moral superiority, it's about recognizing that attraction thrives on authenticity. Take courage, for example. Most of us think of it in grand terms, facing danger or speaking truth to power. But Stoics saw courage in subtler acts. Texting first without fear of seeming eager, ending a mismatched relationship kindly but firmly, admitting when you're wrong. These everyday choices compound into a reputation not as someone perfect but as someone reliable. And reliability is catnip for meaningful bonds. Justice, another Stoic virtue, plays a surprising role in attraction. It's not just about fairness in societal systems. It's about how you treat the waiter, the ex, the person who can do nothing for you. Seneca's letters overflow with warnings against duplicity. A person's character is revealed by how they treat those they don't need. That's the litmus test. Someone might charm you with compliments, but watch how they speak about others behind closed doors. The Stoic approach: be the person who's consistent, not to manipulate perception, but because fragmented identities are exhausting to maintain. Wisdom here isn't about reciting philosophy quotes, though that doesn't hurt. It's about discernment, knowing when to invest and when to walk away. Ever pursued someone who was lukewarm, mistaking their ambivalence for a challenge? The Stoics would call that a failure of wisdom. Attraction rooted in virtue doesn't grovel for crumbs of attention. It recognizes that mutual interest should feel like a river, not a drip feed. Here's the paradox: when you stop molding yourself to fit others' preferences, you become more desirable. Not to everyone, and that's the point. Virtue acts as a filter, repelling those who want a mirror and attracting those who value substance. Think of Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire yet wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one." That's the secret. The most compelling people aren't those trying to be compelling. They're too busy living by their code to notice who's watching. So next time you're tempted to adjust your personality to fit someone's ideal, ask the Stoic question, would I respect myself more if I stayed true to my values here? Because the right people won't just be drawn to you, they'll recognize you. What if the secret to deeper attraction wasn't adding more dates, more sparks, more effort, but subtracting? Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, the practice of imagining loss to sharpen gratitude. At first glance, picturing your partner gone or a first date as your last might seem counterintuitive. But this mental exercise isn't about pessimism, it's about presence. Seneca wrote, "He who fears loss has already lost." In the context of dating, that translates to a radical truth. The less you cling to permanence, the more fully you experience connection. Take something as simple as a shared meal. Most of us scroll through half the conversation, assuming there'll be endless more. Now flip the script. What if this were the last time you sat across from them? Suddenly, the way they crinkle their eyes when they laugh, the cadence of their voice, these details snap into focus. Negative visualization isn't morbid, it's a lens that strips away distraction. The Stoics knew something modern psychology confirms. We value what we perceive as scarce. By mentally rehearsing loss, you don't invite it. You defang its power and amplify your appreciation for what exists now. Consider how this reshapes attraction. Most relationships start with heightened attention, texts replied to instantly, plans prioritized. Then routine sets in and we stop seeing the person, only the habits. Negative visualization interrupts that drift. Imagine waking up tomorrow to silence where their good morning message should be, not to dwell on absence, but to rediscover the gift of their presence today. This practice cultivates what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but freedom from being jerked around by passive attachment. When you engage with someone as if each moment might be the last, you bring an intensity of attention that's irresistibly magnetic. History's greatest love stories thrive on this tension. The poet Rilke wrote, "Love consists in this, that two solitudes protect and touch and greet each other." That greeting implies a continual rediscovery, not ownership. Apply negative visualization to dating, and you stop treating people like fixtures in your life and start honoring them as fleeting gifts. The partner who feels truly seen, not as a role spouse, lover, but as a dynamic human, will always find you more compelling than someone who takes them for granted. Here's the paradox: by embracing impermanence, you create something more enduring. A relationship built on daily choice, not obligation, carries a charge that routines can't dull. So next time you catch yourself mindlessly scrolling past your partner on the couch, pause. Play the Stoic game. What if this were the last ordinary Tuesday? Watch how the mundane transforms into the sacred, and how your capacity for deep attraction grows in the soil of that gratitude. Modern dating feels like a chess game where everyone's obsessed with the end game. Will they commit? Do they like me? Are we official? While forgetting the actual moves. Stoics flipped this script 20 centuries ago with a radical idea: focus on the play, not the prize. Epictetus, who trained gladiators in philosophy before teaching emperors, put it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish. Swap improve for connect, and you've uncovered the sixth rule: detach from outcomes but commit fiercely to how you show up. Picture two people preparing for a date. One rehearses lines, strategizes accidental touches, and mentally drafts their Instagram captions as a couple. The other simply asks, "How can I be fully present tonight?" That's the Stoic divide. Obsessing over results, whether it's a second date or a label, turns interactions into transactions. But when you pour energy into the quality of your presence, listening without planning your response, sharing stories without measuring reactions, you liberate yourself from performance anxiety. Ancient Stoics called this prosoph, attention to the moment, not the aftermath. This isn't about being passive, it's about redirecting effort where it actually matters. Consider Marcus Aurelius' morning ritual. When you wake up, tell yourself, today I'll meet nosy, ungrateful, aggressive people, but I won't be surprised or derailed because I can't control their actions, only my own integrity. Apply that to dating. You can't force chemistry, but you can choose curiosity over calculation. You can't guarantee reciprocity, but you can offer kindness without tallying debts. The irony, this unattached engagement often creates the very outcomes we stop chasing. History's most charismatic figures, from Cleopatra to modern diplomats, shared this trait. They mastered the art of presence. Not because they'd read Stoic texts, but because they understood a universal truth. People sense when you're more invested in their reaction than the interaction itself. Ever been on a date where someone's laughter felt timed, their questions scripted? Contrast that with the rare conversation where you felt seen, not because the other person was perfect, but because they were unguardedly human. That's the Stoic sweet spot, practical application. Next time you're tempted to agonize over a text's perfect timing, try this. Ask, am I focusing on control or connection? If it's the former, pause. Write the message you genuinely want to send, then hit send without obsessing over the reply. This shifts your locus of validation from external, their response, to internal, your honesty. The result, less anxiety, more authenticity, and paradoxically, that's when attraction deepens, because nothing's more magnetic than someone who engages not to win but to wonder. The Stoics didn't just preach this, they lived it. When Seneca's political enemies exiled him to Corsica, he didn't beg for pardon. He wrote letters exploring nature's beauty, studied philosophy, and later returned to Rome more influential than ever. His detachment from the outcome, exile or recall, didn't weaken his efforts, it purified them. That's the lesson for modern love. When you stop treating every interaction like a stepping stone and start treating it as the destination itself, you become the kind of person others want to keep walking with. Ghosting, awkward first dates, mismatched expectations, we call these dating failures, but the Stoics called them training grounds. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. At first glance, that sounds like empty optimism, but buried in those words is a ruthless refrain. Every dating setback isn't a roadblock, it's a shortcut to becoming more magnetic. Think of it like strength training. Muscles don't grow from smooth, easy lifts, they tear under resistance first. Attraction works the same way. The person who's weathered mismatches with grace, who's turned ghosting into a lesson rather than a wound, carries a quiet confidence that's impossible to fabricate. Take ghosting, the ultimate modern dating insult. Most of us spiral into self-doubt or bitterness, dissecting every message for clues. But here's the Stoic pivot. What if being ignored isn't about your worth, but about their emotional immaturity? Epictetus, who was traded as property before teaching emperors, had a rule. If someone handed you a gift and you refused it, who owns the gift? The answer, the giver. Apply that to ghosting. Their silence isn't yours to carry. The real power lies in how you reclaim that energy. Maybe you journal 3 things the experience taught you about your boundaries. Maybe you laugh with friends about the absurdity of investing in someone who vanished like a bad Wi-Fi signal. Humor and growth are kryptonite to rejection's sting. Now consider mismatches, those dates where conversation drags like a stalled elevator. Modern dating advice screams next, but the Stoic asks, what can I learn here? Maybe you discover you've been prioritizing surface charm over substance. Maybe you practice patience with someone shy, uncovering that attraction isn't always instant fireworks. History's most adaptable lovers, from Casanova to Frida Kahlo, shared this trait. They treated awkwardness as compost for charm. a disastrous date becomes a story at dinner parties. A mismatch sharpens your clarity about what actually resonates. Here's the secret sauce. Resilience isn't just attractive, it's contagious. Picture two people at a party. One complains about their terrible luck with dating. The other shares a cringeworthy first date story with self-deprecating wit. Who draws you in? The Stoics knew this millennia before psychology coined post-traumatic growth. Every obstacle in love is a chance to refine your discernment, your humor, your ability to bounce back brighter. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome during plagues and wars, yet wrote, "The blazing fire makes flames and brightness out of everything thrown into it." That's the mindset shift. When you stop seeing dating hurdles as failures and start treating them as fuel, you stop attracting people who flinch at flaws and start drawing those who admire your ability to alchemize them. So next time a date goes sideways, ask the Stoic question, how can this make me more of who I want to be? Not every connection will last, but every challenge can leave you lighter, wiser, and infinitely more magnetic. We live in a world that mistakes volume for value, where dating profiles scream accomplishments and conversations become monologues competing for airtime. But the Stoics practiced a quieter art, the eloquence of restraint. Musonius Rufus, the philosopher who trained Epictetus, put it plainly, "You should need only two things to be compelling, a noble mind and a controlled tongue." That's Rule 8, the magnetic power of silence. Not the awkward pause of someone with nothing to say, but the intentional quiet of someone who knows words are precious. Think about the last time you felt truly heard, not pacified with nods while someone waited to speak, but listened to with full attention. That rare experience creates a gravitational pull because it signals something deeper, respect. Modern dating teaches us to perform, to cram our best anecdotes into first impressions, to turn dates into resume reviews, but the Stoics saw through this. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one," he was also warning against the trap of self-narration. There's a difference between sharing your life and selling it. Ever met someone who drops accomplishments like breadcrumbs, hoping you'll follow the trail to admire them? Contrast that with someone who asks surprising questions, who lets silence breathe after your answer. One approach seeks validation, the other sparks curiosity. Here's where Stoic listening transforms attraction. Active listening, what psychologists now call deep listening, wasn't just etiquette to the Stoics, it was ethics. Epictetus taught his students, "You have two ears and one mouth, use them in that proportion." When you listen without planning your response, you accomplish two things simultaneously. First, you telegraph confidence. Only someone secure in their own worth doesn't rush to fill space. Second, you learn faster. Most people reveal exactly what they crave: validation, adventure, stability, if you stop talking long enough to hear it. History's greatest diplomats, from Cleopatra to modern negotiators, mastered this. They knew secrets aren't extracted, they're surrendered when the other person feels safe. The magic lies in the balance. Stoic silence isn't stoicism, it's strategic. Consider how Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome not by grand speeches but by observing first, acting second. Apply that to dating. Before sharing your traveler's soul, notice if their eyes light up at stories of Morocco or glaze over. Before confessing your love of obscure philosophy, probe gently to see if they lean in or check their watch. This isn't deception, it's emotional intelligence. The loudest person in the room might get temporary attention, but the one who speaks sparingly and listens deeply, they're the ones people remember. Practical application. Next conversation, try the Stoic pause. After someone finishes speaking, count 2 heartbeats before responding. Not as a manipulative tactic, but as discipline, to absorb what they said rather than reflexively reacting. Watch how this tiny space changes the dynamic. They'll feel heard, you'll gain clarity, and in that exchange, something rare emerges, the kind of connection that can't be manufactured, only earned. Because attraction isn't about convincing someone you're interesting, it's about showing them they are. There's a peculiar kind of exhaustion that comes from dating someone whose words and actions never quite match. They text, "I miss you," but cancel plans. They praise honesty yet dodge hard conversations. The Stoics had a name for this disconnect dissimulation, and they considered it one of the quickest ways to extinguish genuine attraction. Epictetus, who was famously intolerant of hypocrisy, put it bluntly: "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That's the ninth rule. Alignment isn't just about integrity, it's a magnetic force. When your actions echo your intentions without contradiction, you create a current of trust that pulls people toward you effortlessly. Think about the last time someone promised to call and followed through without reminders. Or the colleague who volunteered to help and actually showed up prepared. That reliability sparks something deeper than charm. It triggers what psychologists call secure attachment. The Stoics understood this centuries before modern science. Inconsistency, whether in dating or friendships, forces others to expend mental energy deciphering your motives. But alignment, it's cognitive ease in human form. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Translated to attraction, if your words say you matter but your actions whisper when convenient, people don't feel conflicted, they feel deceived. Hypocrisy wasn't just a moral failing to Stoics, it was a practical repellent. Epictetus used a vivid analogy. If you pour praise onto others but never live up to your own standards, you're like a carpenter who builds shaky chairs while lecturing on craftsmanship. Imagine two suitors. One showers you with poetic compliments but forgets your birthday. The other shows up quietly with coffee when you're stressed, no fanfare attached. Who earns your trust? The answer lies in our evolutionary wiring. We're built to prioritize dependable behavior over dazzling words because survival once depended on reading actions, not speeches. This principle scales from small gestures to life-altering commitments. Seneca warned his students about the theater of virtue, people who perform goodness for applause rather than practice it when no one's watching. Modern dating is rife with this, profiles claiming adventure-seeking, but whose idea of spontaneity is choosing a new Netflix show. Contrast that with someone whose Instagram reflects their real hobbies, whose weekend stories match their stated passions. The gap between projected image and lived truth might be the ultimate attraction killer. Practical application: audit your own alignment. Start small. If you tell a date you're bad at texting but will try, then actually set reminders until it becomes habit. If you claim to value depth, steer conversations beyond surface-level banter. The magic lies not in perfection but in direction. Even Marcus Aurelius, the emperor-philosopher, journaled nightly about where he'd fallen short, not to self-flagellate, but to close the gap between aspiration and action. Here's the paradox: when you stop curating a persona and start living your truths unapologetically, you repel the wrong people faster and draw the right ones closer. Like a lighthouse cutting through fog, alignment signals who you are without apology. And the people who resonate with that signal, they won't just be attracted, they'll feel like they've come home. Jealousy doesn't whisper, it roars. It hijacks your pulse when you see their name light up someone else's phone, or knots your stomach when they laugh a little too long at a coworker's joke. Modern dating tells us to suppress these feelings or weaponize them, play it cool, or stir drama to test their loyalty. But the Stoics, those ancient architects of emotional alchemy, saw jealousy differently, not as a flaw to hide or a tool to wield, but as a mirror reflecting where we've tied our worth to someone else's choices. Epictetus, who endured enslavement before teaching kings, laid down the challenge: if someone can trigger you by ignoring you, you're enslaved to their attention. That's the paradox. The more desperately we cling to someone, the more power we hand them to destabilize us. Here's the Stoic reframe: jealousy isn't proof of love, it's evidence of an unexamined fear. When envy flares, pause and ask the question Seneca scribbled in his letters: What am I truly afraid of losing? Not them, but the validation, security, or identity they represent. Imagine two reactions to seeing your partner dance with someone at a party. One person tenses, drains their drink, and fires off passive-aggressive texts. The other notices the discomfort, then interrogates it. Is this about their behavior or my fear of being replaced? The first reaction repels. The second transforms jealousy into fuel for self-assurance. History's most centered lovers, from poets like Rumi to modern relationship researchers, agree. Possessiveness might demand attention, but composure earns respect. This isn't about tolerating mistreatment. It's about distinguishing between genuine red flags and self-inflicted wounds. Marcus Aurelius journaled nightly about separating facts from stories. Apply that to jealousy. The fact might be they smiled at someone. The story, they'll leave me. The Stoic move, challenge the narrative. If their actions violate your values, address it with clarity, not accusation. If it's your insecurity masquerading as intuition, own that truth instead of outsourcing the emotional labor to them. Practical steps. Next time jealousy strikes, try this 3-part Stoic autopsy. First, locate the wound. Name the specific fear: abandonment, inadequacy. Second, trace its origin. Did past betrayal condition you to expect disloyalty? Third, design a ritual. Maybe you journal 5 counterexamples when they've shown up for you, or text a friend to voice the feeling without acting on it. The goal isn't to eliminate jealousy, it's to neuter its power to dictate your behavior. Consider the magnetism of someone secure. They don't police their partner's friendships or demand constant reassurance. Why? Because their sense of worth is anchored internally in their virtues, their purpose, not in another's fleeting attention. That's the ultimate attractor, not someone who claims ownership over others, but who demonstrates ownership of themselves. So the next time jealousy hisses in your ear, thank it. It's just spotlighting where you've given someone else the remote control to your peace. And as the Stoics knew, reclaiming that control doesn't make you cold. It makes you unshakably, irresistibly free. We live in a world obsessed with packaging, curated Instagram aesthetics, witty dating app one-liners, the perfectly timed aloof text, but strip away the filters and facades and what remains. The Stoics posed this uncomfortable question 20 centuries ago, and their answer forms the 11th rule: depth over decoration. Seneca, who advised Rome's elite while sleeping on a hard bed and eating simple meals, wrote scathingly about relationships built on vanity. How ugly it is to see a soul gilded over with someone else's gold. His words cut to the core of modern dating's paradox. We chase surface glitter while starving for substance. Consider 2 profiles. One features polished vacation photos, a bio listing high-status hobbies and carefully crafted humor. The other, a slightly blurry picture of someone mid-laugh, a mention of their obsession with obscure history podcasts, and a clumsy admission about burning toast twice this week. Which one invites the real you to step forward? Stoics weren't against pleasure or beauty, they opposed mistaking them for foundations. When Marcus Aurelius warned, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind," he was also speaking to attraction. A relationship anchored in shared values, curiosity, integrity, kindness weathers storms that sink those built on mutual admiration for each other's social currency. This isn't theoretical. Neuroscience confirms what Seneca observed. Our brains light up more for authentic emotional connection than for prestige. Think about the last time someone surprised you by remembering your obscure childhood fear or your irrational hatred of cilantro. That specificity, the choice to see beyond the script, creates a chemical bond stronger than any status symbol. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the interconnectedness of all things, but its modern translation is simpler. Being known feels better than being impressed. History's greatest love stories, from Abelard and Héloïse to quieter modern partnerships, share this trait. They prioritize the quiet depth of shared worldview over the noisy allure of shared spotlight. Practical application: try Seneca's bare table test. Imagine stripping away your job title, your possessions, your physical appearance. What's left to offer? Maybe it's your ability to make people feel heard, your relentless curiosity about how things work, or your willingness to sit with someone in silence when they're hurting. Those are the currencies of Stoic attraction. The next time you're tempted to lead with your accomplishments on a date, pivot. Ask instead, what's something you believe that almost no one agrees with you on? The answer will reveal more about compatibility than any checklist of surface traits. Vanity isn't just superficial, it's exhausting. Ever notice how the most perfect couples on social media often fracture quietly? Contrast that with a couple who shows up mismatched and unbothered, more interested in their conversation than their composition. The Stoic approach doesn't reject beauty or success, it just refuses to let them overshadow character. As Musonius Rufus taught, a noble character is the only possession that endures, so let others lead with their decorations. You'll be too busy building something that lasts. We've all carried a mental checklist at some point: tall, witty, adventurous, loves dogs but dislikes cilantro. The problem isn't the preferences themselves, it's the way we weaponize them against reality. Stoics called this prohersis, the act of confusing our rigid ideals with what actually matters. Epictetus, who watched students sabotage happiness by clinging to fantasies, offered a brutal truth. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. In love, that means admitting your perfect partner script might be the very obstacle standing between you and something real. Take something as simple as height preferences. Research shows women who insist on dating only men over 6 feet eliminate nearly 80% of the male population, including potential matches who might share their values, humor, or vision for life. The Stoic question isn't why compromise, but what's truly non-negotiable. Ancient philosophers drew a line between preferred indifference, nice-to-haves, and virtues must-haves. A shared love of travel, pleasant but replaceable, integrity when conflicts arise, foundational. Flexibility here isn't settling, it's upgrading your criteria from superficial to substantive. History's greatest love stories thrive on this pivot. Consider Emperor Marcus Aurelius and his wife Faustina, arranged as teenagers in a political marriage, with none of the spark modern daters demand. Yet their letters reveal a bond deepened by mutual respect during wars and plagues, not checklist compatibility. Or Jane Austen, who turned down a wealthy suitor because he lacked elasticity of mind, her code for intellectual curiosity, a Stoic virtue disguised as Regency-era preference. These weren't people lowering standards, they were sharpening them to cut through noise. Practical application: try this Stoic audit. List your deal breakers, then categorize them, which are about character, honesty, resilience, and which are about taste, music preferences, hobbies. Now imagine someone who embodies the first group but flunks the second. Does their absence from your life truly serve you? The goal isn't to abandon preferences, but to interrogate their origin. Are they yours or inherited from rom-coms and social comparisons? Here's the paradox: when you loosen your grip on the fantasy, you free up energy to notice the unexpected gems. The barista who remembers your order might reveal more care than the globetrotter with perfect photos. The single parent with limited free time might demonstrate more commitment than the perpetual dater always keeping options open. As Seneca wrote, if you don't know what port you're sailing to, no wind is favorable. Defining your non-negotiables isn't restrictive, it's the compass that helps you recognize safe harbor when storms blow your fantasies off course. So next time you catch yourself dismissing someone over arbitrary metrics, ask the Stoic question: is this preference serving my happiness or my ego? Because the right partner isn't the one who ticks every box, it's the one who makes you forget you are keeping score. Anger floods the system like a toxin, pulse racing, vision narrowing, words firing before the brain can catch them. In dating, this eruption might look like snapping at a delayed text, storming out over a harmless comment, or clinging to past arguments like ammunition. Seneca, who wrote an entire treatise dissecting anger's futility, called it brief insanity, and nothing kills attraction faster. Why? Because anger doesn't signal passion, it broadcasts a lack of self-possession. Picture two reactions to a cancelled date. One person sends a sarcastic, "Nice of you to finally remember I exist." The other responds, "Disappointed, but I get it. Let's reschedule." Who would you respect more? The Stoic answer isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about channeling it with precision. Seneca's antidote to anger rests on a simple truth: most offenses in dating aren't personal, they're logistical. A forgotten anniversary might stem from work stress, not fading love. A flirty comment to someone else could reflect their insecurity, not your inadequacy. "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," he wrote. Before reacting, ask the Stoic pause question: is this about malice or human error? The distinction determines whether your response repairs or escalates. Ancient Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios to desensitize themselves to minor irritations. Apply that to modern dating. Mentally rehearse your partner forgetting your birthday or showing up late. When it happens, you're not blindsided, you're prepared to respond with grace, not fury. Consider the magnetic effect of someone who stays composed under friction. Think of Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, whose quiet dignity under provocation made him iconic. Or modern relationships where one partner's ability to de-escalate arguments becomes the glue that holds them together. Emotional regulation isn't repression, it's the art of choosing your battles with surgical care. Seneca warned that anger gives nothing but a wince. A cutting remark might feel satisfying in the moment, but it erodes trust incrementally. Every eye roll, every passive-aggressive dig, every slammed door whispers to the other person, "I'm not safe when things get hard." The Stoic alternative: objective reframing. When conflict arises, mentally step outside yourself and ask, how would a wise observer narrate this situation? Suddenly, his tardiness isn't disrespect, it's traffic. Her distraction isn't indifference, it's an impending work deadline. This isn't making excuses for others, it's refusing to let your peace be hijacked by assumptions. Marcus Aurelius modeled this daily, writing reminders like, "When you wake up irritable, ask, is this really worth surrendering my tranquility?" Practical tools from Seneca's toolbox. First, the hand-to-heart technique. When anger flares, physically place your hand on your chest. The tactile interruption creates space between stimulus and response. Second, the delay rule. Commit to waiting 24 hours before confronting any perceived slight. Most offenses shrink or vanish with time. Third, humor as diffuser. Ancient Stoics used wit to puncture tension, not sarcasm but playful perspective. Imagine diffusing a spat about laundry with, "Well, if you're going to weaponize my socks, I surrender." Attraction isn't just about chemistry, it's about predictability of care. People don't leave relationships because of fights, they leave because of how those fights are fought. The partner who knows you'll approach conflict with curiosity instead of contempt. That's the kind of safety that makes love last. As Seneca put it, "He who has injured you is weaker or stronger. If weaker, spare him. If stronger, spare yourself." Either way, anger loses its power, and what remains is someone worth staying for. There's a myth in modern dating that being agreeable, always available, endlessly accommodating makes you more attractive. But the Stoics knew better. Boundaries aren't walls, they're signals. Imagine two people at a party. One says yes to every drink, every conversation, lingering long after they're exhausted. The other gracefully excuses themselves at midnight, not with apology but with quiet certainty. Who leaves you curious? That's the 14th rule. Boundaries don't repel, they refine. When Epictetus said, "No one is free who is not master of himself," he wasn't just talking about resisting temptation. He was describing the irresistible pull of someone who knows their own worth enough to guard it. Take something as simple as response times. You could reply instantly to every text, molding your schedule to someone else's rhythm. Or you could honor your focus, letting messages wait while you finish a project, workout, or even just a meal. The difference isn't rudeness, it's self-possession. Ancient Stoics called this prohersis, the discipline of aligning actions with principles, not impulses. That's the hidden alchemy. People don't respect you for how much you give them. They respect you for what you won't sacrifice. Seneca, counseling his friend Lucilius, put it sharply: if you don't know your own limits, how can you expect others to? History's most admired figures, from Queen Elizabeth I to modern CEOs, shared this trait. They set boundaries not as punishments but as prerequisites. Think of Rosa Parks' quiet refusal to move. Her no wasn't hostile. It was a magnet for those who shared her dignity. Applied to dating, when you articulate deal breakers early, whether it's smoking, emotional unavailability, or disrespect, you're not being demanding. You're saving everyone time. The right person won't flinch. They'll lean in, recognizing a kindred spirit who values themselves enough to speak plainly. Here's where Stoicism flips the script. Modern dating advice often frames boundaries as negotiation tools. If they really like you, they'll accept your terms. But Marcus Aurelius took it deeper. The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything. Translation: if someone balks at your boundaries, their approval was never worth having. This isn't about testing others, it's about trusting yourself. Picture two suitors. One agrees to every request but resents you silently. The other says, "I can't do Friday nights, that's when I call my sister," then suggests alternatives. Who demonstrates more integrity? Practical application. Start small. Next time someone suggests plans that conflict with your gym session or writing time, try this: "I'd love to. Can we meet after 7? Not as a test, but as a truth. Watch how this shifts dynamics. The energy vampires drift away. The emotionally mature stay, often relieved they've been waiting for someone who won't blur into their demands. Because here's the secret: boundaries aren't just filters for others, they're mirrors for you. Every time you uphold one, you reinforce your own respectability. And that, more than any pickup line or clever text, is what draws the right people like a beacon in the dark. Solitude scares us. We fill empty evenings with scrolling, silence with podcasts, weekends with plans, anything to avoid being alone with our thoughts. But the Stoics didn't just tolerate solitude, they revered it as the forge of self-sufficiency. Seneca wrote, "Be wary of the crowd. It's not people that are dangerous, but your own inability to do without them." That's the 15th rule. The ability to enjoy your own company isn't just a quirk. It's the antidote to neediness and a magnet for mature connection. Picture two people on a first date. One casually mentions their solo hiking trip last weekend, their voice warm with nostalgia. The other admits they haven't eaten dinner alone in years. Who carries an air of intrigue? That's the difference between someone who seeks completion and someone who offers wholeness. Modern dating conflates loneliness with solitude, but Stoics drew a sharp line between them. Loneliness aches for external validation. Solitude cultivates internal richness. Marcus Aurelius spent his reign leading wars and governing an empire, yet his journals overflow with reflections written in stolen quiet moments. He wasn't escaping responsibility, he was fortifying himself to meet it. Apply this to attraction. The partner who texts 5 times during your guy's night isn't showing devotion, they're revealing a void only you can fill. Contrast that with someone who sends you off with a genuine "enjoy your time." Their ease broadcasts a silent confidence: "I'm complete with or without you." That's the kind of security that makes love a choice, not a crutch. History's most captivating figures, from Emily Dickinson to Nikola Tesla, shared this trait. Their richest ideas emerged in isolation. Not because they hated people, but because they honored the alchemy of uninterrupted thought. The same principle applies to relationships. Ever noticed how the most balanced couples maintain separate hobbies, friendships, even travel? It's not distance, it's the Stoic practice of anachoresis, periodic withdrawal to return fuller. Like a tree shedding leaves to conserve energy for spring, solitude allows you to reconnect from overflow, not deficit. Practical steps start small. Try a coffee date with yourself, no book, no phone, just observing the world. Notice how discomfort gives way to curiosity. Graduate to solo activities that stretch you, a movie, a museum, a day trip. The goal isn't to become a hermit, it's to prove to yourself that boredom and silence won't destroy you. As Epictetus taught, first say to yourself who you would be, then do what you must to become that person. Each hour spent contentedly alone is a brick in the foundation of your independence. Here's the paradox: the less you need someone, the more freely you can choose them. That's the alchemy the Stoics mastered. When your partner knows your happiness isn't their burden to carry, they're free to love you without reservation. So next time you feel the itch to fill silence with chatter or plans with strangers, pause. Ask Seneca's question, what am I afraid to hear in the quiet? The answer might just lead you to the kind of self-possession that makes attachment healthy and attraction effortless. Laughter is the ultimate act of rebellion against life's chaos, and the Stoics knew it. While they're often painted as stone-faced ascetics, their writings brim with biting wit and playful irreverence. Marcus Aurelius joked about the absurdity of palace politics in his private journals. Epictetus, the philosopher born into slavery, disarmed hecklers with sarcasm so sharp it could have trended on Twitter. This is Rule 16. Humor isn't just a social lubricant, it's a Stoic superpower that transforms tension into connection. Think of the last time someone made you laugh during a stressful moment, not with forced positivity, but by acknowledging the ridiculousness of the situation. That's Stoic lightness in action. It's not about denying hardship, it's about refusing to let hardship dictate your mood. Consider the magnetism of self-deprecating humor. When someone pokes fun at their own quirks, say, admitting they're the kind of person who burns water, they accomplish three things at once. First, they signal security. Only someone truly comfortable in their skin can laugh at their flaws without crumbling. Second, they give others permission to relax. Your date stops worrying about spilling wine when you've already joked about your own clumsiness. Third, they create shared memory glue. Neuroscientists confirm we bond faster over laughter than over shared trauma or even common interests. The Stoics practiced this deliberately. Seneca wrote letters filled with playful jabs at his own excesses, not to trivialize his growth but to make wisdom approachable. History's most charismatic leaders wielded this weapon. Winston Churchill disarmed critics with quips like, "I may be drunk, but you're ugly, tomorrow I'll be sober." Cleopatra reportedly charmed Caesar not just with beauty but with razor-sharp banter. The common thread: they understood that humor, especially the kind that nods to life's absurdities, doesn't diminish authority, it amplifies it. Applied to modern dating, someone who can laugh when rain ruins a picnic or a souffle collapses radiates a resilience far sexier than any perfectly curated Instagram feed. But there's a Stoic boundary here. Epictetus warned, don't confuse self-deprecation with self-loathing. The goal isn't to turn yourself into a punchline, but to showcase ease with imperfection. Imagine two first-date blunders. One person spills coffee and mutters, "Classic me, always a disaster." The other grins, "Well, now we've got an origin story for our future how we met" speech. The first reinforces insecurity, the second rewrites the narrative. That's the sweet spot, using humor not to mask vulnerability, but to reframe it as part of life's rich tapestry. Practical application: next time plans implode a late train, a mistaken order, try Seneca's absurdity spotlight. Instead of complaining, narrate the situation like a nature documentary. And here we observe the urban human, thwarted by something called brunch reservations. Will they adapt? Stay tuned. This does more than diffuse frustration. It signals to others that you're someone who travels light through life's hiccups. Because at its core, Stoic humor isn't about being funny, it's about being free. Free from taking yourself too seriously, free from the tyranny of perfection, and free to attract people who prize genuine connection over performative polish. After all, as Marcus Aurelius might say, if the universe itself is an eternal inside joke, why not laugh along? Patience is the quiet revolution modern dating forgot. In a world where apps condition us to expect instant replies and talking stages collapse under the weight of premature expectations, Stoicism offers a radical alternative, the art of unhurried connection. Picture two suitors. One peppers you with texts if you don't reply within an hour, their anxiety masquerading as enthusiasm. The other sends a thoughtful message Friday afternoon suggesting coffee, sometime next week, no rush, their calmness radiating a different kind of confidence. Who leaves you curious? That's the power of what the ancients called macrothymia, the discipline of long-spirited endurance. Seneca, who advised wealthy Romans on matters of the heart and state, put it bluntly, time discovers truth more readily than urgency. This isn't about playing hard to get, it's about recognizing that depth can't be microwaved. Consider the way vines grow. Forced with synthetic light, they produce leaves but no fruit. Given seasons, their roots deepen naturally, yielding richer harvests. The Stoics observed this in human bonds. Epictetus taught his students, no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. Apply that to dating. Pushing for labels or milestones before their time often backfires, not because the connection lacks potential, but because trust needs breathing room to solidify. History's most enduring love stories, from the slow burn correspondence of John and Abigail Adams to modern couples who built friendship first, share this trait. They let the foundation cure before adding weight. Modern dating confuses patience with passivity, but Stoics saw it as active wisdom. Marcus Aurelius meditated daily on the circle of control, the truth that while you can't dictate someone's feelings or timeline, you can choose your own intentionality. Imagine two approaches to a promising but uncertain connection. One person orchestrates accidental encounters and mines mutual friends for intel. The other focuses on their own growth, booking that cooking class, deepening friendships while leaving space for organic development. The first reeks of scarcity, the second whispers abundance. Which energy would you rather receive? Here's where Stoic patience becomes unexpectedly magnetic. When you resist the itch to force clarity, you accomplish two things. First, you filter out those who thrive on drama or instant gratification. Second, you attract people who recognize your restraint as emotional maturity, the kind that bodes well for future conflicts or parenting. Cleopatra didn't win Caesar and Antony through pursuit, but through patience, letting them come to her, intrigued by her self-contained world. The same principle applies today. Someone who's comfortable with silence between dates or ambiguous phases signals they're investing in you, not just their own loneliness. Practical application. Try the Stoic season test. Before escalating a relationship, whether it's defining exclusivity or saying, "I love you," ask, have we weathered enough ordinary Tuesdays together? Not just highs of vacations or holidays, but the mundane moments that reveal character. Another tool, the pause principle. When tempted to double text or seek reassurance, physically step away for 24 hours. Often the urge passes, replaced by clarity. The paradox: the less you chase certainty, the more it finds you. Like a butterfly landing on an open palm, the right connections thrive when not clutched at. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, the speed with which you rush toward relief from suffering becomes the measure of your suffering itself. In love, as in life, patience isn't waiting, it's the quiet work of becoming someone who doesn't need to rush at all. Kindness with strings attached isn't kindness, it's bartering. Think about the last time someone did you a favor, then reminded you of it weeks later. That subtle pressure turns generosity into emotional debt. The Stoics called this other interest a radical practice of kindness rooted not in what you'll gain, but in what aligns with your nature. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What's not good for the hive isn't good for the bee." At its core, this isn't about morality, it's about recognizing that sincerity, not strategy, creates bonds that last. Consider two co-workers. One brings coffee for the team every Friday but keeps score, expecting promotions in return. The other anonymously leaves a book on your desk after you mention an interest in philosophy. The first feels like flattery, the second like genuine care. That's the Stoic distinction. When kindness flows from duty to humanity rather than hunger for reciprocity, it carries a quiet weight. Epictetus, who survived slavery by focusing only on what he could control, his own integrity, put it bluntly, "If you help someone and expect something back, you've done business not good." History's most magnetic figures understood this. Princess Diana didn't shake hands with AIDS patients for PR. She removed her gloves to dismantle stigma. Fred Rogers preached kindness not to be adored, but because he believed every child deserved dignity. These weren't saints, they were practitioners of Stoic arid excellence of character. Applied to dating, the partner who listens without waiting for their turn to speak, who remembers your allergy not to impress but to care, builds trust that no grand gesture can replicate. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics observed. We're wired to detect ulterior motives. A study in social psychology quarterly found that recipients of transactional kindness reported feeling less close to the giver, not more. The magic lies in what Seneca called the joy of the deed itself. Imagine two scenarios. You surprise your partner with concert tickets because they love the band. If your mind immediately jumps to, "Now they owe me a romantic weekend," the gift loses its warmth. If you simply relish their excitement, the memory becomes its own reward. The practical shift: audit your intentions. Before an act of kindness, whether texting to check in after a rough day or picking up their favorite dessert, ask Seneca's question, "Would I still do this if no one knew it was me?" That litmus test separates performance from principle. This isn't about suppressing needs, it's about meeting them directly rather than disguising them as generosity. Here's the paradox: when you stop using kindness as currency, it becomes priceless. The person who gives freely, not to secure love but because giving aligns with who they are, radiates a security that's irresistible. Like a tree offering shade without demanding gratitude, they become someone others want to sit beneath, not out of obligation, but because their presence alone feels like shelter. So next time you're tempted to keep score, remember the Stoic mantra: the wise man gives because he is full, not because he is empty, and in that fullness attraction finds its deepest roots. Love is not a territory to be fenced but a garden to be tended, and the Stoics were the original landscape architects of this truth. Where modern relationships often confuse intimacy with ownership, tracking locations, demanding constant check-ins, resenting independent friendships, Stoicism offers a radical redefinition. Love thrives in the space between together and free. Seneca captured this in his letters: "If you wish to be loved, love. Not control, not monitor, not possess, just love." At its core, this isn't idealism. It's the recognition that suffocation isn't devotion, it's insecurity in disguise. Consider two relationships. In the first, partners share passwords as a rite of trust but bristle when one attends a solo weekend retreat. In the second, two people maintain separate hobbies and friendships, yet prioritize Sunday dinners where they exchange stories like gifts. The Stoics would argue the second model fosters deeper loyalty, not despite the independence but because of it. Epictetus, who trained students in the art of mental freedom, posed a piercing question: would you chain someone to keep them close, then why chain their spirit? Ancient Rome's most enduring marriages, like that of Pliny the Younger and his wife Calpurnia, who supported his political career while pursuing her literary passions, embodied this. Their letters reveal not surveillance but celebration of each other's growth. Neuroscience now confirms what the Stoics intuited. A study in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that partners who supported autonomy, encouraging separate goals and friendships, reported higher relationship satisfaction and less jealousy. Why? Because trust, when tested voluntarily, becomes unshakable. Contrast this with the modern obsession with claiming someone through hurried labels, possessive pronouns, or social media declarations. The irony: the more tightly we grip, the more slip through our fingers like sand. Marcus Aurelius framed it as an exercise in acceptance. Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny. In love, that means releasing the illusion that control guarantees permanence. Practical application: try the Stoic breathing room experiment. For 1 month, replace questions like, "Who were you with?" with "How was your day?" Notice how the shift from interrogation to curiosity changes the emotional climate. Or adopt Seneca's gift mindset. View your partner's time with friends not as a withdrawal from your account, but as an investment that enriches what they bring back to you. Here's the paradox the Stoics mastered. Love is the one thing that multiplies when you stop treating it like a commodity. A tree doesn't hoard sunlight, it transforms it into branches that create more shade. Similarly, the healthiest bonds aren't those where two people orbit each other obsessively, but where they root deeply in their own soil while leaning toward the same sun. So next time fear whispers what if they leave, whisper back the Stoic truth. What if they stay, not because they have to, but because they choose to again and again? That's the kind of attraction no cage can replicate. There's a quiet power in knowing when to step back, not in anger or punishment, but in clarity. The Stoics called this strategic withdrawal, and it's one of the most overlooked tools for healthy attraction. Picture a general pulling troops not from defeat, but to gain higher ground. In relationships, this isn't about playing games. It's about creating space to distinguish infatuation from compatibility. Seneca practiced this deliberately, retreating to his country villa not to escape life, but to return to it with sharper vision. He wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage. Sometimes to pause is an act of love." Consider the modern dating trap. You meet someone electrifying, and within weeks, every text thread feels urgent, every silence heavy with meaning. The Stoic antidote: a planned retreat. Not ghosting, but a conscious decision to mute the noise and ask, does this person align with my values when I'm not intoxicated by their presence? History's greatest strategists, from Sun Tzu to Churchill, understood that distance reveals what proximity obscures. Apply that to romance. A weekend apart might show you whether you miss them or just the dopamine hit of their attention. This isn't cold calculation, it's emotional archaeology. Marcus Aurelius journaled nightly to excavate his thoughts from the rubble of the day's emotions. In relationships, strategic withdrawal serves the same purpose. Imagine two scenarios. One couple spends every night together for a month, blurring into a haze of inside jokes and shared takeout. Another couple intentionally schedules separate trips after 3 dates, returning with fresh stories and clearer eyes. The first risks mistaking habit for connection. The second tests whether the bond thrives outside the bubble. Practical application: try the Stoic silent sabbatical. For 1 week, mute their social media, resist stalking their Spotify playlists, and journal instead. Notice what surfaces: relief, anxiety, boredom. Those emotions are compass needles pointing to your true north. Epictetus offered a razor-sharp question for such moments. What do you really fear losing, this person or the fantasy they represent? Here's the paradox: withdrawing strategically often deepens attraction. Like a painting viewed from different angles, space lets you appreciate dimensions closeness can't reveal. The right person won't panic at your absence, they'll respect it and perhaps even mirror it, because as the Stoics knew, love isn't about possession. It's about choosing freely, again and again, with both eyes open. vulnerability and courage might seem like opposites, one about exposure, the other about endurance, but the Stoics saw them as two sides of the same coin. Picture a soldier not just standing firm in battle, but also writing heartfelt letters home, unashamed of his longing. That's the 21st rule. True strength isn't armor, it's the willingness to remove it selectively. Modern misinterpretations paint Stoics as emotionless statues, but Marcus Aurelius' private journals overflow with raw tenderness, grief for lost friends, gratitude for his teachers, even frustration with his own flaws. His courage wasn't in hiding these feelings, but in acknowledging them without being ruled by them. There's a Stoic exercise called premeditatio malorum, where practitioners visualized worst-case scenarios not to numb themselves, but to soften the blow of life's inevitable stings. Apply that to relationships. When you preemptively admit, "I might get hurt," you're not weak. You're preparing to love more fully, not less. Consider the magnetism of someone who shares appropriately. Not oversharing trauma on a first date, but saying, "I've been nervous about dating again. This feels nice," with steady eye contact. That subtle admission does three things at once. First, it signals self-awareness. You know your emotions well enough to name them. Second, it extends trust, inviting the other person to reciprocate authentically. Third, it demonstrates what the Stoics called eustathia, emotional stability that isn't brittle. Epictetus, who endured slavery before teaching emperors, put it plainly: "Don't pretend nothing affects you. Practice not being overcome by what affects you." There's a world of difference between suppressing tears and choosing when to shed them. History's most admired leaders modeled this balance. Theodore Roosevelt's speeches rallied nations, but his letters to his children reveal a man unafraid to call himself a silly old goose when overwhelmed by fatherly love. The poet Sappho wove desire and heartbreak into verses so intimate they survived millennia. These weren't people leaking emotions uncontrollably. They were artists of vulnerability, wielding it like a scalpel to cut through pretense. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics practiced. Couples who share fears and dreams early, not as demands, but as offerings, build intimacy exponentially faster than those stuck in small talk. The practical shift: try the Stoic layered disclosure method. Start with low-stakes vulnerability. "I'm terrible at karaoke, but I'll try if you pick the song." If met with respect, deepen gradually. "Social situations sometimes drain me. I recharge with quiet nights." Each step is a litmus test for emotional safety. Notice how this differs from trauma dumping or performative transparency. As Seneca advised his friend Lucilius, "Share your wounds, not your infections." Here's the paradox the Stoics unearthed. Vulnerability within boundaries doesn't diminish authority, it amplifies relatability. A leader who admits mistakes inspires more loyalty than one who projects infallibility. A partner who says, "That hurt my feelings," with calm clarity fosters more repair than one who bites their tongue or erupts in accusations. Because ultimately, attraction isn't about perfection, it's about the courage to be seen and the wisdom to know that's enough. Life doesn't stand still, and neither do the people in it. Careers shift, bodies age, passions evolve. Yet so many relationships fracture under the weight of rigid expectations. The belief that love means freezing someone in the version of themselves you first fell for. The Stoics called this rigidity the enemy of Amor Fati, the love of fate. Seneca framed it as sailing. If one doesn't know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. But what if the port changes? What if the person you married at 25 isn't the same at 40, and neither are you? That's where adaptability becomes the quiet superpower of lasting attraction. Think of the couple who met as punk rockers but now trade spreadsheet tips, or the partners who transition from lovers to co-parents without resenting the shift. These aren't compromises, they're evolutions. Marcus Aurelius faced this as emperor. His journals reveal a man constantly recalibrating his approach to war, governance, even parenting. He wrote, "Adapt yourself to the things among which your lot has been cast." Apply that to love. The partner who clings to how things used to be misses the chance to discover who you're both becoming. History's most enduring unions share this trait. Abigail Adams ran the family farm while John shaped a nation, their letters revealing a bond that stretched across roles: lovers, strategists, sometimes adversaries. The physicist Marie Curie and her husband Pierre constantly reshaped their collaboration as she outpaced his fame. These relationships thrived not despite change, but because they treated it as fertilizer for growth. Contrast that with couples who crumble when someone's hair grays or hobbies shift. The Stoic secret: falling in love with someone's core virtues, their integrity, curiosity, kindness, not their fleeting forms. Practical application: try the river test. Visualize your relationship as a river. The water constantly moves, but the current remains. List 3 constants in your partner's character: their humor, resilience, compassion. Then 3 ways their expression has evolved. Maybe they've swapped partying for pottery or ambition for equanimity. If the currents still align, celebrate the new terrain they're flowing through. Adaptability isn't about tolerating neglect or betrayal. It's recognizing that the most magnetic people aren't those who stay the same, but those who grow and who give you space to do the same. Because the ultimate act of Amor Fati in love isn't holding on tight. It's trusting that what's meant for you will grow with you. Romantic sparks crackle and fade, chemistry's fireworks dazzle but rarely warm. The Stoics proposed a different foundation for lasting love: sympatheia, the understanding that all things are interconnected, and the most fulfilling bonds are those woven with shared purpose. Picture 2 couples. One is glued together by late-night passion and inside jokes, but flounders when asked to assemble furniture or navigate a family crisis. The other moves in quiet synchrony, not because they share every interest, but because they're building something larger than themselves. That's the power of what Marcus Aurelius called working together like 2 hands, when partnership becomes less about how you feel and more about what you're creating. Passion has its place, but history's most resilient unions, from the Caries laboring side by side in their radioactive lab to couples running shelters or raising children, thrive on something sturdier: mutual mission. Seneca observed this in his letters. A ship is safest in harbor, but that's not what ships are for. Applied to love, the couples who weather storms aren't those who cling to the dock of initial infatuation, but those who chart a course together. This isn't romanticizing drudgery. It's recognizing that folding laundry while strategizing your nonprofit fundraiser can forge deeper closeness than any candlelit dinner. The sweat equity of shared purpose: teaching your child to ride a bike, sanding floors in your first home, becomes the mortar no tempest of emotion can erode. Consider the science behind this. Psychologists studying marital longevity find that couples with aligned goals, whether it's community service, artistic collaboration, or simply cultivating a certain family culture, report higher satisfaction during life's inevitable dry spells. Why? Because purpose is renewable energy. Attraction fluctuates, fatigue sets in, but working towards something meaningful together generates its own momentum. The Stoics knew this intuitively. When Epictetus spoke of humans as social atoms, he wasn't advocating collectivism. He was noting that we're wired to find fulfillment in contributing to something beyond ourselves. A partnership anchored there doesn't just survive, it evolves. Practical application: try the Stoic mission audit. Sit separately and answer, what legacy do I want my life to point toward? Then compare. Maybe one dreams of traveling to document vanishing cultures while the other wants to foster rescue dogs. The magic lies not in identical answers, but in finding where your vectors overlap, the intersection where I becomes we. Perhaps it's mentoring underserved youth or creating art that challenges norms. Even small, everyday purposes count. The commitment to making your home a sanctuary, or to being the couple that always hosts Thanksgiving for strays. Here's where sympatheia transcends mere compatibility. When two people see their relationship as one thread in a larger tapestry, whether it's raising conscious children, advocating for a cause, or simply spreading more kindness in their corner of the world, the stakes shift. Arguments become less about you versus me and more about how do we realign to serve what matters. That's the alchemy the Stoics uncovered. Shared purpose doesn't dilute passion, it gives it a backbone. So next time you evaluate a relationship, ask not just do they make my heart race, but do we make each other better citizens of the world? Because the love that lasts isn't the one that burns brightest, it's the one that builds something neither could alone. And perhaps that's the ultimate Stoic love story. Two flames not melting into one, but side by side, lighting up the same path. Desire, when left untamed, becomes a wildfire consuming not just what it seeks, but the one who seeks. The Stoics drew a line between the quiet pull of natural longing and the chokehold of obsession, a distinction Epictetus framed as what's up to us and what isn't. Romantic desire falls on both sides of that divide. It's natural to yearn for connection, to feel the thrill of a deepening bond. But when that yearning hardens into demand, when their affection becomes your oxygen, you've crossed into treacherous terrain. The ancients called this pathos, a disordered passion that mistakes love for possession. Consider the difference between lighting a candle and torching a house. Both involve fire, but one warms without destruction. Healthy desire is the candle. It illuminates the other person without reducing them to fuel. You appreciate their presence without needing it to validate your worth. Obsessive craving, that's the inferno. It's refreshing their social media 10 times an hour, dissecting tone shifts in text like a forensic analyst, rewriting your schedule to accidentally cross their path. Epictetus, who trained students in the art of emotional discipline, warned, "Freedom isn't the right to act as you please, but the right to act with integrity." When desire morphs into fixation, you sacrifice that freedom on an altar of anxiety. History's most tragic lovers, from mythological figures like Medea to modern stalkers, share this fatal flaw. They conflate intensity with depth. But Stoic desire is measured not by how much it consumes you, but by how much it inspires you. Marcus Aurelius journaled about his wife Faustina, not with cloying adoration, but with gratitude for how her companionship refined his character. That's the litmus test. Does this longing make you more or less yourself? A healthy crush might prompt you to learn Italian because they love Dante. An unhealthy one leads you to abandon your own hobbies to mirror theirs. The Stoic remedy isn't repression, it's redirection. When you feel the itch of irrational craving, ask Epictetus' two-part question: is this within my control? If not, what can I control instead? You can't mandate reciprocity, but you can channel that energy into becoming someone who attracts it naturally. Picture two poets pining for the same muse. One drowns in despair, writing increasingly unhinged letters. The other transforms longing into art, letting the emotion fuel creativity rather than decay into desperation. Which one would you respect? Which one might the muse actually turn to see? Practical application. Try the desire audit. List what you crave from this person: their time, validation, physical closeness. Now cross out anything that requires their cooperation to fulfill. The remaining items, those are your work. If you crave emotional security, cultivate self-assurance through therapy or journaling. If you hunger for excitement, inject more adventure into your independent life. This isn't about denying desire, it's about fulfilling its root needs in ways that don't hinge on someone else's choices. Here's the paradox: the more you discipline desire, the more space it has to breathe. Like a garden pruned with care, it grows healthier when not allowed to choke itself with unchecked vines. The Stoics knew that moderation isn't the enemy of passion, it's the guardian of its longevity. Because the right kind of wanting doesn't shrink you, it leaves you whole enough to choose, not need. And that's the kind of attraction that doesn't just spark, it sustains. Love isn't something you find, it's something you do daily. The Stoics didn't view love as a distant treasure to be won, but as a practice as deliberate as tending a garden. Consider how a rose doesn't bloom because the gardener once declared it beautiful, but because they keep showing up, watering, pruning, adjusting for seasons. That's the 25th rule. Attraction isn't sustained by the explosion of first sparks, but by the quiet, consistent rituals that feed the flame. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled an empire yet wrote love letters to ordinary moments. The way his wife's laughter crinkled her eyes, the warmth of shared silence at dawn, understood this deeply. His journals reveal a man who saw love not as a trophy on a shelf, but as hands in the soil, planting seeds that outlast fleeting emotions. Think of the rituals that outlast infatuation. The coffee poured before the other wakes, the inside joke that still lands after a decade, the way you pause their favorite song when it plays because hearing it alone feels like stealing. These aren't grand gestures, they're what the Stoics called ascesis, disciplined practices that shape character. Epictetus compared love to archery. You don't control hitting the target, only how you draw the bow. Apply that to relationships. You can't force passion to stay, but you can create the conditions where it chooses to. The partner who leaves a note in their lunch bag isn't guaranteeing affection. They're honoring a commitment to show up regardless of the day's mood. Modern psychology echoes this ancient wisdom. Studies on marital longevity show that couples who practice micro-rituals, like a 6-second kiss at day's end or a shared gratitude journal, maintain connection through life's droughts. Why? Because rituals bypass the fickle realm of emotion and anchor love in action. Seneca wrote to his wife Paulina, "I feel your presence even in absence because I've trained my mind to seek you in habits, not just in sight." That training, the deliberate choice to fold their laundry with care, to listen without solving when they vent about work, is what separates lasting love from the kind that fades when the novelty does. Here's where Stoicism flips the script on modern romance. We're taught to chase the high of new love, the butterflies, the obsessive texting, but the Stoics revered the deeper alchemy of familiarity. Not the absence of passion, but its transformation into something more resilient. Imagine two couples. One thrives on dramatic reunions after fights, mistaking intensity for depth. The other has a mundane Tuesday ritual, taking turns picking a poem to read aloud over dishes. The first burns bright and erratic, the second glows steady, its heat banked by small, sacred repeatables. Practical application. Start with the Stoic 3 grains exercise. Each evening, share 3 tiny, specific things you appreciated about each other that day. Not "you're amazing," but "the way you hummed off-key while making breakfast made me smile." This isn't flattery, it's active noticing, a bulwark against taking each other for granted. Or try Musonius Rufus service swap. 1 week, one partner chooses an act of service, packing their lunch, handling a chore they hate. The next week, roles reverse. The goal isn't fairness, it's cultivating the habit of attentiveness. The Stoics reserved their deepest reverence for love as a verb because they knew emotions are weather, but actions are climate. A single sunny day doesn't define a season, just as a grand anniversary gesture can't compensate for months of neglect. The couples who last, who still catch each other's eye across a crowded room after decades, aren't those who never argued or grew bored. They're the ones who treated love less like a fireworks display and more like tending a hearth, feeding it not with explosions, but with kindling, one small, deliberate piece at a time. So as you close this list, remember the most magnetic love isn't found in the extraordinary moments, but forged in the ordinary ones. Not in the lightning strike, but in the daily decision to stand in the rain together, hands outstretched, believing the storm will pass, but the garden you've tended. That will outlast every season. These 25 rules aren't just strategies, they're a revolution in how we understand attraction. From self-attraction to shared purpose, each principle circles back to the same Stoic truth. Real magnetism begins when you stop chasing love and start embodying the qualities that make connection inevitable. Think of them as a blueprint, not for manipulating outcomes, but for becoming someone who naturally draws in the right people and repels the wrong ones. This isn't about memorizing lines or mastering body language hacks. It's about cultivating virtues so deeply that they radiate from your pores. Integrity that doesn't bend for approval, humor that disarms without diminishing, boundaries that whisper self-respect louder than any boast could. Imagine treating these rules like a gym for your character. Instead of rushing to apply all 25 at once, try focusing on just one each week. Start with the simplest, maybe practicing Memento Mori by savoring moments with loved ones as if they were finite. Notice how it shifts your presence, then move to tougher muscles like channeling jealousy into self-inquiry or embracing solitude until it becomes fertile ground rather than a void. Progress isn't linear. Some weeks you'll stumble over old habits like reaching for your phone to fill silence or crafting texts designed to manipulate replies. That's not failure, it's feedback. The Stoics celebrated missteps as the raw material for growth. As Epictetus quipped, "No man steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." Every attempt rewires you, even the messy ones. I'd love to hear which rule resonates most or challenges you deepest. Drop a comment below sharing your experiments. Did negative visualization deepen your gratitude? Did setting boundaries unexpectedly draw people closer? Relationships are our greatest classroom, and your insights might light the way for others. We'll close with Marcus Aurelius, who scribbled this reminder in the margins of his war journals. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That's the heart of Stoic attraction, not the frantic search for someone to complete you, but the quiet joy of becoming someone who meets the world and the people in it from a place of wholeness. Because the most beautiful relationships aren't built on desperation or dazzle. They're built on the steady, unshakable wisdom that you are already enough, and from that soil, everything worth having grows.